welcome to episode 69 of Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report. Well, today isn't April the 19th, it's April the 18th. But April the 19th is indelibly printed on my mind. And if it's not already indelibly printed on yours, I think it will be after the show tonight. 6 years ago, precisely, I was sitting in a hotel room in Lisbon, Portugal, unable to fly back to the UK due to the skies of Northern Europe being closed because of the alleged volcanic ash preventing all aircraft movements. While I was sitting in my hotel room, I realized that we were fast approaching April the 19th, a very, very significant date. And I felt so motivated to put out a newsletter in the dying hours of April the 19th. And this newsletter I have on screen here, the first day of the 13th day fire ritual, Monday the 19th of April 2010. And I was writing from the Lisbon Hotel about the day of sacrifice by fire. Well, just a few hours after putting that newsletter out, of course, and my regular viewers will know that I spent a number of years trying to get people to focus on what really happened on the BP Deepwater Horizon and the role played by BP company men Bob Kaluza and Donald Verdreen. Now, sadly, just a few months ago in December, the US federal government announced that neither Bob Kaluza nor Donald Verdreen would face any charges for their part in what transpired on that fateful day 6 years ago. Well, my guest tonight, I was having a conversation with him actually at the weekend about this very subject. Well, my guest tonight actually, unusually, has had some coverage in the mainstream media. And here's the article. Daily Express, 3 years to save mankind, says David Icke, 25 years after coming out as the Son of God. Well, we're all familiar with that Wogan interview. But no, my guest tonight isn't David Icke. It is the person who was actually interviewing David Icke a few weeks ago, Zen Gardner. Zen, good evening. How the devil are you, my friend? I can't hear you, my friend. I've lost your sound.
Oh, my fault.
There we go. I got you now. Wait, hey, listen. Yeah. I have to, Zen. I have to just before you say. I just have to say, and bring your attention back to that Daily Express article, because there was a paragraph in there that caught my attention. It said, in a rambling 2-hour interview with fellow awoken conspiracist Zen Gardner on his YouTube channel, Icke said the Matrix film series and Johnny Depp movie Transcendence were realistic forewarnings of what was about to come if humans remain blind. But what is truly remarkable is that article on the Daily Express website actually had this graphic and a link to your interview with David Icke. So, you know, in their inimitable way, maybe somebody at the Daily Express is actually helping to get the word out there. And this was a sentence in that article that also caught my eye, and it basically saying that since Icke had changed a path, as it were, it says, since then, he has peddled endless conspiracy theories about 9/11 being an inside job and about corruption within the banking system. Well, even the mainstream media now acknowledges the corruption within the banking system. So maybe, once again, in their inimitable way, they are actually intimating that there might be more to 9/11 than the official conspiracy theory, as it were. So anyway, Zen, on that note, it's a little bit different. Tables are turned here. It's not David Icke. And you've actually got a plain background because, like I said to you earlier, it looked to me like the artwork behind you in that interview was something straight out of the Denver airport murals.
It's actually a famous Peruvian piece that the owner of the house I'm living in actually painted. It's a copy. But I didn't even recognize that until you told me. Very similar art. It really is. the Indian art.
Well, yeah, as we're going to see as we go through. I mean, you over the last few years, you have really made a name for yourself amongst the alternative community. And I mean, I think the term alternative community is actually a misnomer. I think we should simply rename it the independent thinkers.
Right. Yeah, it's a morphing field. I mean, you think about all the people who are not just the ones that are awakening anew, but those who are awake and continuing to reach new understandings and levels of activation and change. We're in quite a thrilling time when you can sort of sense this constant change, and the wonderful people you get to meet that are so hungry to do the right thing, find the most effective means to accomplish what needs to be done. Anyway, I find it thrilling. And the great thing about that piece, Ian, I'm glad you brought that up, but there's so much truth in it. It's chock-a-block with truth. I mean, even though he's got his cynical attitude, well, if he didn't, it wouldn't get published.
Exactly.
So that's just the sugar coating on the pill, if you ask me. And the fact that they put the whole interview in there, I think you're right. I think the guy is trying to say something, and this is the only way he can do it.
Absolutely. And more and more people in the mainstream media are using this approach. And you're absolutely quite right, of course. If they actually wrote it from, shall I say, a sympathetic stance, then there's not a chance in hell that it would get published. So on that same vein, I mean, there is an element of truth in the observation that this awakening, the activation, as you refer to it, is actually stimulated by drama and trauma. Personal experience on the microcosm, but then when it becomes a planetary trauma, then it's the macrocosm. And if it wasn't for these dramas and for the trauma that often manifests from those dramas, then people wouldn't be activated. People would just be lulled into a sense of well-being, they'd stay in their comfort zone and wouldn't really be getting too much out of their time on this mortal coil.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that happens on an individual basis as well. People, I mean, ultimately they'll face sickness, death, loss, financial tragedy. Might have an after-death experience. But on the macro, like you're saying, it's the fact that society gets traumatized. People can look at it like, oh, it's a bad thing. But if that's what it takes, and I say this a lot, if that's what it takes to wake people up, then so be it. If people are so lulled to sleep, now it wouldn't have to happen if the world weren't so addicted to this matrix type system, which is not healthy and is only destined to have bad effects. So to fall asleep in that is like falling asleep in the hot tub, like the proverbial frog in the pot. And it's better to get woken up. And if it takes trauma, so be it. And sometimes, just like that article, if these so-called bad guys do all this crazy stuff, maybe this is all working in some cosmic dance towards growth, towards further awakening, towards further learning love and responsibility. So be it. I mean, I'm here to learn. I want to learn all I can, and I find it thrilling, but I'm leaning into it, and that's why I keep telling people everything I write is, lean into it. Don't be on the defensive. There's a lot of stuff's going to come at you, very personal changes, as well as, like you said, the macro changes, which we track intrepidly in the in the free media circuit. But the purpose of it isn't to breed fear and see who gets the most hits or is the most on it kind of thing. The purpose is, with greater awareness, we're armed. We're, like they say, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. It's not to intend it and dwell on it and even draw it into our experience. It's to empower. It's to help us be able to decipher when that wave hits, what it was. It's like understanding when you're getting a lot of EMFs, people are very sensitive to them and they're getting louder. Well, if you know what they are, you won't think something's wrong with you. You'll know it's external. And that's important in times of understanding what's going on. Same with all the manipulations of these parasites. It's external. We can see it for what it is. We can read it. We can understand it. It's almost like reading Braille or something. And okay, I see what they're doing. And it empowers. It liberates. Anyway, I think you're right. I think trauma is obviously it's what's happening.
Well,
trauma.
So one could argue that if you like, the lessons are simply becoming more accelerated. They're coming closer together, which is a tremendous opportunity. Maybe there's certain other elements to this. Maybe the rules of the game are such that they have to tell us what they're doing, and they're doing such a good job of telling us what they're doing that more and more people are becoming aware, which is forcing them to tell us even more about what they're doing. So, it's a wonderful acceleration in many respects. Yeah. And, we are speaking tonight on the eve of April 19th, 2016. Of course, in parts of the globe, it's already April 19th. And historically, this has been a date of awakening opportunity, because this is the day of sacrifice by fire. And we were speaking about this on Sunday, and I actually took this quick summary. Of course, the one thing that's missing here actually is the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. But, and this list isn't exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination. But, we have consistently these dramas, these tragic dramas, occurring around about this juncture. And of course, the ones that, the three that, are indelibly printed on most people's minds are that of Waco in 93, where sadly it was a significant number of women and children were burned because they were in the basement. And it's now pretty well established that it was the ATF that initiated the assault, not the Davidians. Then, of course, 2 years later, we had the Oklahoma City bombing, which was blamed on the lone gunman of Timothy McVeigh, which, even if you look at this picture, of Oklahoma City, which is blamed on a truckload of fertilizer explosives, well, this is a truly remarkable device, because it apparently sucked the front of the building off.
And the beams were, if you look at the early pictures, the beams are blown out from the building towards the street.
Exactly, and so this remarkable bomb sucked off the front of the building and threw the debris a few hundred yards over the top of the truck. And one of the police officers, of course, Terry Yeeke, who witnessed a lot of the anomalies that day, ultimately, of course, ended up dead in his patrol car. And then in 99, on this date, we have this was on the 20th of April, we have the Columbine High School massacre. So this is a significant date in the occult calendar, Zen.
And you'll notice that children are targeted. This is a big part of this 13-day festival, whatever you call it, observance, that children would be sacrificed to Baal, who was also Nimrod, and some say it's the same as Saturn. It's a very dark occult image, but child sacrifice is important to it. What's interesting is that the Titanic sank on the 19th of April. The American Revolutionary War began on the 19th of April. If anybody go to some search engine and look it up, you'll find some fascinating research and little dots that connect that are very important to know about. So these kinds of things, and they're not to give people fear. It's not to get all dwelling on the negative. The point is to be aware. These are the parasites that are trying to dominate and control the earth and us. So we need to know their language. So we need to read their numbers. We need to understand their symbolism. We need to speak their language, and then we can get a heads up. And actually, I mean, you and I were talking about this too, Ian, that the fact that we've been able to call them out, identify these things, has thrown their plans amok in many cases. You'd be hard-pressed to actually prove that with hard data, but it appeared things were going to happen a certain way, but there was such a outcry from independent researchers, and it became very, very common knowledge that it appears that in some of these cases, they've been pushed back a little bit. That really confuses them, like Ole Damagard talks about a lot in his research. When we're on to them, and they play the same old bag of tricks, but when we speak their language, it's important. Just don't dwell on it, and people really just can't get afraid of it. It's just like these earthquakes going on now. There's earth changes going on, and they will continue. But we need to be aware, follow patterns, find good researchers, good information. That's really important.
And yeah, step out of the zombie apocalypse, as somebody said to me today. They feel that they're already in the zombie apocalypse because the vast majority of people appear to be totally locked into the three-dimensional reality, or in their version of reality, which simply revolves around entertainment and self-gratification. But
yeah.
Zen, this is the sacrifice to Baal, and this is the temple to Baal in Palmyra. Now, Palmyra has been in the news recently because of it was held allegedly by ISIS, of course, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. And actually, I'm very familiar with Palmyra. I went there many times because I used to drive that route between Damascus and Deir ez-Zor up in the northeast of the country, which is the heart of the Syrian oil fields. And here is a depiction of Baal. And as you say, a massive part of this was child sacrifice. And in Canaan, of course, children were brutally sacrificed to Baal because they put a fire inside the statue and then put the child onto the hot metal of the arms. And it is very difficult for us to comprehend a mentality that actually enables a society to participate in that. But, there again, we probably don't have to look too far, like in the Middle East, to see a culture today that thinks nothing of genocide of the neighboring population.
Yeah, so true. It's horrific. And unfortunately, people have become, or allowed themselves to become, desensitized. And again, that's part of the tactic of the mainstream media and all these parasites, is to get us desensitized, so it gets worse and worse while they're getting off on it. But think about it, really, when you were talking, I was thinking about, well, there's not that much difference. There is, but the dynamic's the same. When somebody goes to a football game or a car race, hoping for an accident, or seeing some guy's block get knocked off, and cheering, like the harder the hit, the better. It's the same visceral energy that's being conjured up, and it's very sad that humanity allows itself to get corralled into these Pavlovian techniques, which is all they are. But when it gets that extreme, and obviously we're being conditioned to see things extremely horrific. I mean, just watch some MTV videos, or even in my generation, what's his name with what was his name, that rocker would bite off the head of a bird on the stage, and squirt blood around it. This has been the conditioning of
Alice
horror
Cooper,
movies.
wasn't it? Alice Cooper?
Alice Cooper, that's right. Horror movies. And look at the, what are they called? The Dracula type movies. What are those creatures called? I mean, they're so popular. People go there to get the fear, the bejesus scared out of them, the fear fed. It becomes an addiction rather than something that is an unnecessary burden you have to carry because of some, like what's happening in Gaza or Syria, where these poor people are getting bombed to smithereens and have to live in a very real fear. They got people in the West going to get fed fear. I mean, it's a strange, like we were talking before, it's a psychotic breakdown. It's not even cognitive dissonance anymore. It's a psychosis, and we're in very deep straits. And back to what I was saying before. It's important that we find out how to maintain our energy, not get drained by things that don't do any good, so we can be strong enough to face what's coming at us, because it will continue to get strange, no doubt.
You know, it's. I mean, I'm no biblical scholar, but you know, it's very reminiscent in respects of the story of Abraham, and of course, you know, Abraham was having a relationship with Yahweh. I mean, it's very evident from the scriptures that Sarah, Abraham's wife, felt so comfortable with Yahweh that she laughed when he told her that she would get pregnant, because she was already apparently 90 years of age. But then Yahweh told him he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham actually put up a case that, you know, maybe they should be given another chance. And you know, Yahweh apparently said to Abraham, you know, well, look, go in there, and if you can find just one person that's worth saving, then you know, right, what, I'll change my mind. Well, I mean, I get the sense that there's not just one person, but there's like a few 100,000 of us here right now, that before we sort of came into this physical 28,000 day assignment, you know, there was a discussion going on around the table, and Baal or Enlil or whomever said, you know what, humanity is an abomination. You know, we created it. It's an abomination. It just needs to be wiped out. And then Enki, who always had a bit of a soft spot for his genetic creation, you know, and we said, no, hang on a second, you know, look, you know, give us a chance. And, you know, there's, I don't know, 300, 400, 500,000, maybe a million, whatever, who all came down here, and we said, look, you know, give us an opportunity, because we think that we can bring, you know, humanity around. We can get humanity to see the error of their ways and see what they're really capable of if they embrace, you know, a different ethos. And Enlil, Yahweh, or whomever just said, all right, guys, good luck with that. But, you know, if you come back and it's still the same shit, different day, then that's it. They're coming out. And, you know, I mean, people are turning the corner at a phenomenal rate. And it really does sort of feel, to some extent, as though, you know, we're making progress. But if we take what we were discussing earlier, then maybe in some perverse way, those who are actually perpetrating that, the atrocities, if you like, are actually working with us to provide the mechanism, the trauma mechanisms that are actually the triggers to encouraging more people to see through. I know it sounds perverse.
No, it doesn't. I mean, there's a very interesting subject for people to take a look at called Wetiko. And it's very similar to the Gnostic idea of a mind parasite that is attacking or invading or, you know, giving humanity a really hard time. But there's a guy named Levy who's got some beautiful talks on it. You can get him on YouTube or his book. But he explores this very dynamic. The fact that we have to be willing to, it's like being able to recognize the darkness in ourselves and get off this it's just love and light stuff. We have to have a full-on understanding. And what's happening in our favor very often are some of these very seemingly nasty things. And when we learn to grasp the concepts and see what they're activating or revealing about ourselves, then we have a much more thankful and enlightened attitude. It's similar to the psychological axiom that if somebody bothers you, well, it's probably something about you that you're seeing in them. And a lot of people don't know that. That should be a fundamental. If you're really bugged by something, often, very often, it is something in them that it's reminding you of. Very similar dynamic to what you're saying there. But I think this is a really important part to way of thinking to explore, not to just justify anything and everything, obviously, because there's still that interaction and there's the contest. Like I said in a recent article, it's like the white blood cells in your body are at war all the time, but your immune system is working versus these invading parasites. But that's life. We're in sort of these corrupt bodies, and we're here on this playing field. And the fascinating thing is finding out what it is that we are that's inhabiting this, and the incredible potential that has, and finding out what to do with it. But I think you're really right, Ian. I think it's a really important thing for people to understand. It's very empowering too, and it takes the fear away. If we fear something, we're coming under its power, and it's also a sign of ignorance. But when you understand something, the fear just goes away. It's, I could say, fear of the unknown, but it's deeper than that. Anyway, fascinating subject, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, I mean, as we've discussed many times, we are trying to encourage people to take a look at this for themselves and, stimulate their own curiosity. But so we are on the potential cusp of another awakening opportunity, because tomorrow is the day of sacrifice by fire, and there is the distinct possibility that the parasites will attempt to use this to accelerate their agenda for global dominion, and this it's very clear this is what they're after. And I know that when we were talking the other day, you were making a couple of observations, but not least that you're still anticipating that one of the focuses is on Phoenix in Arizona. And, maybe not many people are aware, but Phoenix does actually sit at a very unique location. First of all, it's in the middle of nowhere, of course. It's in the Arizona desert. But it's actually at 33 degrees and 27 minutes north of the equator. It's 112 degrees west of London, but 33.27 degrees north. And so what, in your opinion, is the significance of this location, Zen?
Well, the 33rd parallel, again, anybody can research this. There's a lot of great information available, but you'll see a lot of things that have taken place on the 33rd parallel, including many of the events that you outlined in the beginning. Waco, Texas is on the 33rd parallel. Columbine, the Georgia Guidestones, Baghdad is on the 33rd parallel. As you talk about in one of your great videos, Mount Hermon.
Oh, funny you should mention that. I have here we go. This is actually from the presentation that I gave, I think, 5 years ago now, the Nephilim Disclosure and Transhumanism. And I was actually calling on the research of David Flynn here, who's sadly no longer with us, but he was the one who identified that Mount Hermon, which of course is the location where the Watchers were deposited. And of course it is from all texts, from biblical texts and from the Sumerian texts, it's very clear that it is, the Watchers were sentenced to be here because they had transgressed by fornicating with the human women. And the offspring, of course, were the Nephilim. This is the location where they were sentenced to remain here until the year of mystery. And, I've discussed that in previous occasions. But yes, Mount Hermon, and of course, Mount Hermon, as you rightly say, on the same parallel as Baghdad. But look at where it is. And, what area of the world is under focus right now as well, of course, all of that area around Damascus and Syria. So, yeah, the 33rd degree.
Right through,
yeah,
right through there, right through Iraq, right through Afghanistan, on into Pakistan. This is their targeted countries, which they've, proclaimed out. in front of everybody. But also on the 33rd parallel, there's Hiroshima and Nagasaki were on either side of it. And even the original atomic testings were done in White Sands, I think Utah or Nevada, I think, right on the 33rd parallel. So these aren't just coincidences. And if you wonder why is this so important? Well, these are energy lines. They're symbolic. These people are very ritualistic, very ritualistic. 9/11, the ritual, the Twin Towers, the whole thing. These are rituals, and they go for maximum impact. And people who don't understand the symbolism are still being impacted. It's not as simple as seeing, it's just a symbol falling. There's very occult, strong undertones to all of these things.
And am I right, Zen, that the gates of Baal, or imitations of the gates of Baal, are being erected in New York and London tomorrow?
Yeah, I heard the New York one was stopped. I think there was an outcry. I heard that's the last thing I heard, but I heard the other one's going to go up in Trafalgar Square, sure enough.
Tomorrow, yes.
Yeah, good old city of London put their thumb on that one.
So what is your hypothesis of, or shall I say conjecture, speculation, as to what may transpire over the next 48 hours or so?
Well, the Phoenix idea came to me because I was really deep into this research, 5 or 6 years ago, and just all the little dots connected. And I thought, look at the name of Phoenix. Look at this, the rising from the ashes. Just like this whole fire symbolism that we're talking about. It's not just symbolism; they actually incinerate children, as you said. For example, Waco incinerated children.
Oklahoma
City, and then the American Revolution. How many children died in that? I mean, children are always involved. But whenever you see a big event and a lot of kids are killed, that's their signature. So that's another thing for people to keep an eye on. But anyway, the way Phoenix was sitting, and then a couple of years later, after I wrote the first article, they were doing bomb drills there. And then, like you hear periodically, a freaking bomb got lost during the drill or something insane. So I started thinking, oh boy, are they setting up for this? And I mean, you just don't know. I mean, I hope it's not the case, and I'm no prophet, but you start to put these things together. And it was like that battleship that they were floating, that old, almost mothballed battleship they floated off of Iran in the Persian Gulf around the time that they were saber rattling about nuking Iran, and Israel's doing all that stuff, and people were saying, well, maybe they're going to use this as a dummy ship and blow up the ship and blame it on Iran, and that's how they get the war. I mean, hopefully, and I think it does matter, when people put this information out and kind of call them out for it ahead of time, they're watching us very closely. And I would say even with a certain amount of respect, because they know that I think we can see it more clearly than a lot of them. Now, I'm in the middle of an article about this, but we are distanced from it. These guys are in there. They're at different levels of information. They're all compartmentalized. They don't really know the whole picture. They're just fulfilling their duty, and they're operating under a lot of fear and stress. So a lot of them are going to our information and going, wow, this is interesting. And, oh, I didn't know that. And is this true? Is this true, boss? Are we going to go do this? And who knows what goes on? But information that's based in truth is so powerful.
Well, and of course, what they're doing is testing to see who has totally subjugated their soul to these parasites. Yeah. Obviously the defense of I was just following orders, but of course, as we know, that is no defense. But they will use that, and they will put enormous pressure on these operatives to carry out their desired will. Yeah,
I mean, they're not afraid to threaten. They'll come and shoot your dog and then threaten your kids. These people are nasty, and we don't hear about half their shenanigans, or 90% of them, most likely, how they keep these people in line. And that's why I continue to maintain that the awakening is happening in very deep levels, even within this matrix, even amongst people who seem to be part of it. There's a lot of them who don't want to be part of it, but they don't see a way out. But the more energized we get, the more we energize them, the more information becomes clear, the more it's available. Things happen. You just don't know. The least we can do is our part. As you know, that's why you and I do what we do. But yeah, it's a nasty system they have going on. I'm thankful I'm not in that.
Well, indeed. Well, and one thing, of course, that we should draw attention to is that if the reports which have been manifesting during the day of significant earthquake activity in Japan and elsewhere, if these reports do prove to be correct, then, of course, the other area, and I know you've written a lot about this from as long ago as 5 years ago, of course, is the New Madrid fault line. And, of course, if the New Madrid fault line is impacted by significant seismic activity, then it could potentially, literally, split the United States in half.
Yes, yeah. This is a important area of information people really should be familiar with. It's the New Madrid fault. When it went off back in the 1800s, it shook New York violently because the plate on that side of the American continent or North American continent is it's not loose like the California plate. So everything rocks like a continuing tabletop. And very destructive. And there wasn't that much infrastructure back then. But now, as I put in another article, you've not only there's like 55 nuclear reactors that right around the whole fault. You've got all the major gas lines cross this fault. And one scientist said if that fault ever went, they'd be able to see the explosion on the moon from the amount of gas exploding from these pipelines. This was like a mainstream guy. It wasn't, some offbeat analyst.
Yeah, I think I took this from one of your articles as well.
Yes, that's the shot.
Yeah, the New Madrid pipeline bomb, and it's not just crossing the Madrid fault line. It's like they're running literally right along it, almost as though somebody was priming.
Yeah. You always wonder that, don't you? When you look at some of these setups, look at all the nuclear reactors.
I mean, you couldn't make it up.
No, nuclear reactors are placed on fault lines right, left, and center. They reopened the first one in Japan practically on the slopes of a reactivating volcano. This is a program. These are time bombs. They're like landmines planted by these insane psychopathic parasites. This is war. That's why you talk about it like you do, and I do a lot. This war on Terra, the planet Terra. This is an attempt to transform, decimate our place, perhaps with their idea that they can refix it after they've decimated it and taken away the majority of the population.
Well, I took another one of your articles on that precise subject. Terraforming, alien or human. It's here, and I have to tell you that some years ago now, before the unconventional gas agenda really took off in Australia. But somebody who is very astute told me back, and I'd say almost a decade ago now, that the purpose of tapping into the unconventional gas reserves was primarily to terraform the atmosphere by making it methane rich. And what is truly remarkable, of course, is the prescience of that observation a decade ago, and not least, of course, because of recent events in Porter Ranch, California, which had 97,000 tons of methane released over the space of 3.5 months or so. So, as you rightly say, terraforming, alien or human, it's here. And, of course, the whole issue of climate change conveniently makes people focus on the macro instead of actually addressing what's causing it. So we discuss this generic of climate change when, in reality, you could really nail it down because it's very easy to see what is directly contributing to that. So you pick off the low-hanging fruit, but no, keep everybody focused on the macro.
Yeah.
Now, Zen, we're running out of time, as we expected to be the case. But I do want to introduce people to your book. And, of course, you will be coming over to speak at AV7 in
Right.
in May. But people who don't get an opportunity to perhaps see you, here's your book. This is You Are the Awakening. And this is the comment made or published on the book by our mutual friend Max Egan. And Max says, Zen Gardner is a remarkable man with a profound insight into the game of life and the art required to effectively travel its pathways. He is one of a rare breed of spirit warrior, able to offer realizations that affect people on a soul level, and has been blessed with the ability to be able to communicate them simply and powerfully. This book is a must-have for anyone on the path to true knowledge and a deeper understanding of both themselves and the reality they inhabit. And of course, if people want to get hold of your book, they can go to your website and read your excellent articles there, www.zengardner.com. So, and as I said, you're coming over again. So how was your experience at AV6?
Oh, it was fabulous. That was a life changer for me, Ian. I mean, it was the first time I got to, I've been doing this for 9 years, stayed behind the scenes deliberately and slowly got coaxed into radio. And then with your invitation, it was a whole breakthrough in my life. And I just can't tell you how thrilling that was. I mean, besides that, having such a great lineup of speakers, the people who were there, and these events, folks, we live together for 4 days. We get to know each other. It is a beautiful experience. And just getting to meet people, and you know how beautiful it is. Someone comes up and they said, oh, I've been reading your site for years, and this, and it helped me with this, that, this. And it's like, wow, it's so gratifying. But more than that, it's meeting these people that in such a beautiful time in their life and learning about them and what they're going through, and how can I help you, and what are your challenges and things like that, and the variety. But fabulous. If you can't tell, I'll rave all day, and I always do about that event. I know this one will be even better. But yeah, they're just beautiful, Ian, and you do an amazing job. So I'm excited as could be. I mean, I'm chomping at the bit to actually, it's the beginning of autumn here, while you're going into spring. So I'm timing it pretty good because the winter's
Yeah,
here.
really. Yeah. Well, the lineup is now complete at AV7. I've literally at the weekend, I've announced the last two speakers. And viewers of UK Column will perhaps be familiar with Anthony Carlin. Anthony is the serving police officer in Northern Ireland who exposed the mortgage fraud. And when the judge ruled in favour of the bank, Anthony Carlin went to arrest the judge. There's his nemesis there, Judge Gillen. But unfortunately, the police ended up arresting Anthony, and Anthony served 6 weeks in jail. So he's coming over to AV7 to share his experiences. And then James Gordon Graham. And James Gordon Graham is, if you like, an insider. He's worked in software. He's managed an IPO, putting his company, a company he set up onto the markets. And his presentation, he's actually going to open the conference. And I think this is going to be a truly remarkable presentation. Very topical right now, of course. And the subject of his presentation is tax havens and the secret multi-dimensional knowledge of the ruling parasites.
Wow, love that.
Yeah, that's a great one to kick off the weekend.
You're not. Nobody's gonna want to be late.
I hope not. So, and although Dave Dees isn't going to be able to, unfortunately, be with us, but we're going to feature a lot of Dave Dees' art while we're there. And so there's just a few remaining rooms now. In fact, I'm talking with the hotel to see if we can get a few extra rooms allocated. But if you want to book, then do so sooner rather than later. And the website is www.alternativeview.co.uk. But it's not all over just at AV7, because a week after AV7, Zen and I, along with Max Egan and Mark Devlin, will be going over to Amsterdam to speak at the Open Mind Conference just to the south of Amsterdam in Aalsmeer. And if you're interested in looking at that event, then the website is www.openmindconference.nl. And then the week before AV7, an event right down in the southwest of England, where I and Brian Garish and Patrick Quanton will be speaking in Camborne in Cornwall. So Zen, it's going to be an exciting time. Let's keep our fingers crossed and visualize a positive outcome, that the ruling parasites do not manage to pull off another stunt to celebrate their day of sacrifice by fire.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of good energy going around. A lot of people aware of this and putting out good energies. But yeah, it's a time to be on our toes, but never fearful.
Excellent. Well, Zen, thank you very much for joining me this evening. And of course, we'll see each other in not even 3.5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's close.
And get it all set for AV7. So thanks a lot, and thank you for joining us this evening for episode 69 of Humanity versus Insanity. And stay vigilant and stay safe.